Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 216 of Kouryer podcast. Our today's guest is Mr. Jude Smith. He's a senior concept artist at Respawn working on Apex Legends, and we're having this call from Vancouver, Canada. And of course, before we get into the signature questions of the podcast, let me quickly mention that in the for contact section of the captions, you can find the ID to his Instagram account, the link to his Twitter account, and also the link to his art session. So if you want to see more of his works in depth and details, you can go check that out. And with that being said, how are we doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And all right, let's jump into the first question. Give us a little introduction on how you got into the world of visual arts and design. Basically, tell us your origin story of, how you decided to become an artist, basically.
Sure, yeah. So my origin story isn't too unique. Like, it's pretty standard for a lot of artists. I happened to just come across the art of Star Wars when I was a kid, and was pretty just blown away that art was used for film and video games. I grew up interested in art because of my grandmother. My grandmother was a painter, and she introduced me and my siblings to a lot of different painting and techniques and stuff like that. And we lived in Washington, D.C., and there's a lot of galleries. There's the National Gallery of Art, and so often when we'd visit, she would take us downtown, and we'd go to museums and stuff. And she had a home studio where she kept art supplies for us at any time we came to visit. So I was really interested in the arts at a young age, but when I first saw the art of Star Wars, my mind was just blown that art was used for entertainment, for the entertainment industry, and that's kind of what got me interested in it. And as a teenager, my parents bought me a copy of Photoshop when it was still on a CD disc, and they got me a tablet. So I liked digital art at a young age, but it wasn't until college that I started taking it seriously as a career.
All right. And speaking of college, were you originally studying art and design, or you were pursuing another career path initially when you were in high school and, we were probably, deciding, what to study in college?
Yeah, I kind of knew what I wanted to do going into college. I went to the Art Institute and I studied animation there for 3 years. I have a degree in animation as well. But I always wanted to do concept art. That was always kind of the focus for me. So everything that I did in classes, I would gear towards concept art.
All right. And by the way, when you're getting hired at a AAA company, because this is something a recent topic that's been, been discussing with some of my friends lately. When you get hired at a AAA company, or just a studio in general, not just, big ones. Of course, to some extent, a degree matters because it's not just a representation of, your education. It's also a representation of, all right, this person has functioned well in a closed microspace of a society, in a professional settings, and also, it shows dedication, all that stuff. So basically soft skill stuff. But when it comes to the actual role you're applying for example, you said you studied animation, you have a degree in animation. That alone, is it enough to, get your foot in the door, or if you want to become a concept artist, or do you have to have a degree in your specific role you're applying for? For example, you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is always a big topic. So this is tricky because I think art schools are good, especially if you are someone who is new to what concept art is and you don't know where to get started. It's a good way to kind of learn the basics. But really the only thing that, at least I didn't go to art center or anything, but for me, I feel really the biggest benefit of an art school is getting the degree, because the degree can help with immigration. So I'm from the States, but I live in Canada. And because I had a degree, it made that immigration a lot easier for me. That being said, I don't think that art schools are the end all be all. I think there's plenty of talent out there that doesn't have an educational background. And because of the pandemic as well, the industry has become way more remote. So it's easier for people to apply to jobs and work remotely rather than having to immigrate now. So really, it kind of just comes down to the degree and if that's going to help you with immigration. At least that's kind of what I've found through my experience. But yeah, it's not necessary to go to art school.
All right. And all right, how does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a new project? Like basically, what does the structure of your pipeline usually look like? Since the pipeline you have developed personally, throughout the years. How does it look like?
Mine's pretty straightforward. I just really enjoy the really straightforward like drawing process. So typically at Respawn, if I'm working on a new project, I will put together like a pitch, like a mood board, maybe do some sketches or whatever, and pitch an idea. And then, I work with the art directors, sometimes with the writers and the designers, and we'll all kind of collab on what the idea is. And then I will start working out some really rough sketches, just like a handful of different ideas, and then show those, and then hear more feedback on the direction. And then usually it will be a few more rounds of sketches, just trying to narrow down that idea. And then once everyone's kind of on the same page of the direction, that's when I start like refining those sketches a little bit more, maybe adding some color, some material variation in there. And it's this back and forth of, creating some sketches, adding to it, and hearing that feedback. And then once everyone is settled on an idea, that's when I take a few weeks to do like a fully polished concept.
All right. And all right, I quickly want to ask you, some stuff about Apex Legends. First of all, do you also play the game as well?
Yeah, I do.
Who are your mains? Now that's the real question.
My mains right now are Seer. I use Caustic a lot, and Bangalore.
Have you been playing since season 1?
No. I was a big fan of Respawn coming out of college because of Titanfall was announced, and they were one of the studios that I really wanted to work for the most. And then Apex Legends was announced, and I love the artwork and the lore behind that as well. And I always kind of like geared my art in that kind of style. And then one day they kind of reached out of the blue and asked if I'd be interested. And since working on the team, I've been playing the game pretty regularly. But I was a big fan of their stuff to begin with.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, the reason I ask that is because I remember, like in 2019, it was one of those weird things. Like it's their marketing was really weird. I don't know if you remember. Like,
they just launched it out of the blue.
Exactly. Like and it worked.
Mm-hmm. And it's pretty crazy how big that game has gone over time. The fan base is super passionate about it. Which is nice. It's a nice project to work on, because it's a live game as well. It's nice to be able to work on something and not have to sit on your work for 4 years, and you can at least show it fairly soon later once it's released, since it's live. So it's a fun project. I really enjoy working on it.
Yeah, definitely. And all right, so here's the thing: when you're trying to come up with your own ideas for a character or when designing them, what main things do you take into consideration when trying to kind of develop their kind of, like, I don't know, for it's also the same in environments as well. You sometimes when you're designing stuff, your set dressing and everything, you need to somehow convey the soul and character of that thing. How would you approach that when it comes to designing your own characters?
Um, yeah. So I think a lot of this is just thinking about the backstory of the character, thinking about who this character is, um, and and trying to tell a story visually about that character. Everything I do kind of revolves around a story. So um, when you're designing a character, all the little details that kind of create that look for the character, down to their expression, how they carry themselves, the clothing they wear, the items they carry, all those, details are an opportunity for you to say something about who that character is. So if you think about, you spend a lot of time before starting a concept kind of thinking about who that character is, it kind of helps guide your design once you carry everything over to like Photoshop or pen and paper. So I really take a lot of time to focus on who that character is and thinking it through before I even start like sketching it out.
All right, now here's an interesting thing, a question I usually ask only the character artists, and which is, in your own personal opinion, what makes a compelling character?
What makes a compelling character? I That's tough, because there's so many different things, I guess, that could be interesting about a character. I really feel like it comes down to the storytelling. What is it you want to say about that character? Something that was tough for me in the beginning was creating like intriguing characters. And I one time had I one once I don't know if you're familiar with Marco Durovic, but he runs Six More Vodka. He was a big Marvel artist for a long time. But I remember years ago, I went to a workshop that he was doing, and I wanted to get him to critique my work because I felt like my work at the time was really feeling flat and there wasn't a lot of depth to the characters that I was doing. And he's a very big character designer. So I had a portfolio review with him, and I knew he was going to be harsh. Like he's a very like strict kind of art director. And man, he ripped my portfolio apart. He was not impressed at all. And his biggest feedback was that I needed to build my characters around some sort of story. There needed to be there needed to be some sort of backstory to them to make them feel more alive, more rich. And so, going back to your earlier question, like that is really where the emphasis of my work comes from these days. And I think what has kind of elevated my work over the past few years was just the fact that I really just take the time to think that character through and who they are and how do they fit into the world that they live in. Yeah, not to like repeat myself, but I feel like to make compelling characters, you really got to think about the backstory, and sometimes less is more. Having a visual hierarchy established on that character too is super important. Knowing what elements of that character need to stand out, what areas of detail need to have the most focus, and then letting all those secondary elements kind of be more simplified and less detailed, less polished. Paying attention to those kinds of things creates intrigue and yeah. I hope that kind of explains the question a bit, but It's a little
Yeah.
bit of
And with that being said, who are some of your favorite fictional characters personally?
favorite. Favorite characters. Well, I mean, going back to being a kid, it would have been like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. And then later on, I like a lot of Neil Blomkamp's characters. I love the aliens in District 9 a ton. District 9 was a big impact on me. Um, I like. I'm also always partial to like robot characters. I don't know why. I like the hard surface looking characters, so like Chappie and K2SO, stuff like that. Always really sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, kind of. I'm the same since I was a kid. I love robot characters in any like franchise or genre. Like even in Apex Legends, my main is Pathfinder. Actually, like I
Yeah.
love it. I love the. It's like a killer robot, but happy, friendly in a sarcastic way in a sense sometimes.
Yeah, I like the challenge of taking a very because robot characters often like they can't express like emotions very well. Like how do you? They don't have muscle features and stuff. So like how do you express emotion and stuff behind them? So I think like Chappie is a great example of a character who. Um, is the main focus of the story, but he's so expressive and you feel for him in moments. So robot characters are always kind of challenging to do.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because like I've heard some. I think it was another podcast I've heard, but someone really said I think it was a character 3D character artist as well. Talking about characters, what makes a good character, and she said like a good character is a well written good character is a character that you can imagine yourself in his place when that person does the actions that's been taking place in the setting that's going on. Like for example, all right, that's kind of convoluted how I said it. Let me
Yeah.
rephrase it in a better way. Like imagine you're watching a movie or reading a book and you're getting so engaged in the medium, all right? And then suddenly in your head, you're like, oh my God, if I was that person, I would have done this. But then as you read on and as the movie, pans out, the person does the exact same thing. So it means that the writing is so well written that it gives a predictable pattern of personality of
Yeah.
that same person, it's,
Yeah.
and that makes it easily much more relatable.
Yeah, that's good. It's like good storytelling when you're able to show like repeating patterns and behavior and stuff.
Yeah, and it gets a lot interesting when you establish that pattern. Then when you do like, for example, plot twists or stuff like that, or it does something outside of that pattern, it makes it much more exciting and kind of
Yeah.
interesting, shocking.
Yeah, and I like it. I like it when artists or storytellers are good at like subtleties too. I feel like too often in like film and video games right now, everything is always over explained. So I think it's really important to understand how to subtly get your point across without like over explaining everything.
Yeah. And all right, so let me ask you another question, which is actually kind of quite an interesting one, because I kind of you'll see what I mean by this. The question is, who are some of your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
So I would say like Ryan Church, and I think it's Dermot Power, I think. They were like some of the first concept artists that I was really into in the beginning because of their work on Star Wars. And then later it was like Craig Mullins and Feng Zhu as well. I remember coming across his YouTube channel when I was in college, and he had a lot of like tutorial videos on YouTube just explaining his process. So that was really helpful for me back in the day. And I'm into a lot of like manga artists as well, like Tanaka and Otama. a lot of like anime influence in my background as well kind of seeps into the character designs that I do these days.
All right. And any advice and tips for a good portfolio and resume for artists? And of course, in this case, is character artists, in concept art.
Yeah, so this is the big question I get a lot from students these days, and I cannot emphasize enough about like really doing the research of, you know, who do you want to work for? Like, who are the studios you want to work for? What are the kinds of projects you want to work on? And gear your portfolio based on the work that you're kind of seeing. So, like for example, if Overwatch, you want to design characters for Overwatch, you should be looking at who the artists are that do that work and look at their portfolios and stuff and start building your own work in kind of a similar style, but don't be like directly like ripping from what you see. Like learn about that style, implement it into your workflow, and create characters that could fit into that kind of world, but do it in your own creative way. Because when like recruiters and art directors are looking at your portfolio, they want to see that not only are you a good fit for their projects artistically, but they also want to see that you are a good designer in your own right. So they don't just want, someone who's good at like creating fan art or anything. They want to see that you are a great designer on your own. So yeah, understand the direction you want to go in and be creative with it.
All right. And by the way, what are you working on right now that you can tell us about? What kind of project is it? I mean, of course, if there's usually there's always an NDA involved. If that's the case, we can skip right past this question. But
I got some exciting stuff coming down the pipeline here pretty soon with Apex, but nothing outside of Apex really.
All right. So we'll stay tuned for that. Mm-hmm. And all right, this is also a very interesting question. I always get fun answers out of people, which is what area beside the area you're working on right now would you be interested to explore and learn in the future? Basically, aside from arts or arts-related stuff, what other stuff are ambitions you have that you want to pursue?
Yeah, that's the especially with AI on the horizon. I don't have a great answer for this one. I have thought about this a lot. But I have always, I guess, as a teenager, really wanted to do concept artist. So it's hard to imagine myself shifting into anything else. But I guess this is a goofy one. But when I was a teenager, I played golf really competitively, and I would probably go back into golf or something. I thought about going pro at one point, but then I was too invested in wanting to do art for a living, so I did not take that route. So maybe I'd go back in that direction.
Well, that's actually the first time someone says golf. That's actually quite interesting.
Yeah, I played it a lot as a teenager, and I played like on a junior tour circuit, and I could have like reached like a professional level, but playing competitively was too much for me mentally. I couldn't handle it, and I just decided in the end that I enjoyed doing art way more, and so that's what I ended up pursuing.
Oh yeah, definitely. It just like I get nervous when I try to play mini golf online, let alone like a competitive actual golf game. Jesus.
Yeah, a lot of people like to kind of joke about it as a sport, but it's very competitive and it's really tough. And I mentally I could not handle it.
Yeah, honestly, I probably wouldn't as well. Like I really have bad control over my power in general. So yeah, golf would be ideal for me. If my life would depend on it, I would probably die. Honestly, it's not that easy.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what helped me like stay competitive in in like an artistic sense, because like we all know how hard it is to get your foot in the door in the industry. And I think um, that experience growing up kind of kept me a little bit tough when trying to get my foot in the door in the industry. So it was good for me, but yeah, it's one of those sports where you're not on a team and you don't have teammates to rely on. So it all kind of comes down to you, and it's hard to deal with day to day.
Oh yeah. And well, we've reached the final question and section of the podcast, which is called Time Capsule. And you can kind of guess what it is, but let me quickly explain. All right, imagine in a limited amount of time that you might have, let's say a couple of minutes or a few minutes, you have this opportunity to say anything from yourself, a human being, to another human being. And that another human being is anyone who's going to listen to this podcast at any point of time in the future. Imagine your escape pod is about to be, thrusted towards the abyss of the space, and you have like just a limited amount of time to save some voice logs, kind of like that. All right. And in that opportunity, what kind of voice recording would you leave from yourself, to anyone who might listen?
Is this like a art related?
Nope, not art related at all. It could be anything, just from yourself to anyone who's listening from your life experience,
That's such a big question. Man, what would I say? It would probably just be, use your time to pursue the things that you love and care about. Because like at the end of the day, what oh, man, that's such a big question. Yeah, I guess just pursue what you love, because we only have so much time in life, and you want to use it doing something that you care about. So that's probably along the lines of something I would say, I guess.
All right. By the way, my microphone dropped. By the way, I hope you're not hearing the cats fighting outside. I don't know if this is a voice coming through.
All good. All good.
Nice. And all right. Thank you so much for coming by. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, no
and
problem.
Where can people contact you if they had any questions? Is your Instagram account okay?
Yeah, they can just reach out to me through ArtStation or Instagram, whatever is good.
All right, awesome. Your ArtStation and Instagram and Twitter are all in the captions. And yeah, that's about it. Usually the last question that I just ask you is one of the main problems people have is they have their answers, but they don't want it to be cliche. That's why they hesitate from saying it. But the truth is, it's not about like what the message is. It's about how the message is being conveyed, because it's really important to, hear from, different perspectives, the same thing, because you get some sort of better clarity on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I had no idea how to answer that one. I was just like, well, this one is like so big of a question, like, so, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's like you get put on the spot. I know what I mean.
Yeah.
And yeah, all right. Again, thank you so much for coming by. And thank you to anyone who tuned in and listened to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can leave a comment or suggestion down in the comments section down below, or you can send them to me directly. I'll check them all out. And with that being said, take care and stay safe. And till next episode. Bye, folks. Bye.